Lake District National Park lies in the northwest corner of England, near its border with Scotland. The area features England's highest mountains, deepest and largest lakes, and its complex geological history has resulted in some of the most spectacular scenery in the whole of the British Isles. The major northern town actually within the Lake District National Park is Keswick. At one time a market town, Keswick became, in the 16th century, the focal point for mining activities in the northwest of England. The Victorians, however, made it popular with the new breed of tourists, a role which it continues to the present day. Keswick is at the foot of Derwentwater, whose 3-mile length is actually a public highway. It was once used to transport miners and ores from the mines in the surrounding fells. Derwentwater has also been a place of pilgrimage for monks and friars, who came to visit the reputed home of St. Hubert on one of the lake's 4 islands. The lower slopes of Skiddaw Mountain afford excellent views across Derwentwater towards the Derwent Fells and round past Newlands Valley to Coaldale and Grisdale Pike. The Lake District is a land where mountains are called fells and waterfalls are called forces. Both names give a hint of the past Scandinavian influence. Seen from Grisdale, Skiddaw towers just over 3,000 feet above Bassenthwaite Lake. The name of Skiddaw comes from an old Viking word meaning craggy hill. The mountain is composed of some of the oldest slate rocks in the lakes. The entrance to the adjacent valley of Newlands is a verdant area, richly populated with flowers and bushes, both cultivated and wild. The infant Keskerdale Beck, here at Moss Force, marks the head of Newlands Valley and commands views back towards Keswick with Skiddaw behind. From the summit of Newlands Pass, Gale Fell can be seen rising above Crummock Water in the Vale of Lawton. Crummock is a Celtic word meaning crooked, and aptly describes this lake, which is curved over its 2.5-mile length. Between Crummock Water and Buttermere Lake, a church rather disdainfully overlooks the village pub and inn at Buttermere. Most lakeland buildings are made of local slate rock, either in thin slabs or large boulders. The name Buttermere is reputed to come from the dairy pastures between the two lakes of Buttermere and Crummock Water. Honister Pass links Lawton Vale with Borrowdale and is a fine example of a valley over-deepened by glacial action some 15,000 years ago. The summit of Honister Pass is at 1,100 feet above sea level and is dominated by slate mines, some of which are still worked. The high-quality green slate found behind these cliffs is used for both building and ornamental purposes. South of Honister, in Borrowdale, are the remains of old graphite or black lead mines, which through the ages have provided material which was used to mark sheep, make guns, and found the Keswick pencil industry. From the valley floor of Borrowdale, Seathwaite Fell and Styhead Gill can be seen. Seathwaite boasts the highest rainfall in England, an amazing 131 inches every year. Styhead Gill falls 140 feet at Taylor Gill Force near Stockley Bridge and is generally considered to be the finest waterfall in the lakes. Back down on the valley floor is the village of Rosthwaite, a quaint ribbon of cottages along the roadside with refreshment for the footsore traveller. Near Rosthwaite is Stonethwaite, above which the Langstrath Beck tumbles in a pretty cascade bound for Borrowdale. The retreating glaciers of the Ice Age probably left this enormous boulder on the side of Borrowdale. It's called the Bowder Stone, and its weight is estimated at 1,900 tons, all of it apparently balanced on a knife edge. Leaving Borrowdale and climbing above the Lodore Hotel, an excellent view opens up over Derwentwater once more. Further along the fellside from Lodore is everybody's picture postcard Ashness Bridge, with its prospect of Keswick across Derwentwater. Doubling back into Borrowdale brings us to Grange, beside the River Derwent. Adjacent to the road bridge is undisputed evidence of glacial action, a smooth, rounded rock bearing scratches made by stones embedded in the passing ice. Some of the buildings in Grange are 200 years old. Most have been carefully preserved or renovated. The village church is a fine example of simplistic Lakeland architecture. Leaving Grange on the western side of Derwentwater, a road climbs to a vantage point on the slopes of Catbells. The wide panorama embraces the summit of High Seat, round to the Blencathra Range and Skiddaw. From Chestnut Hill, outside Keswick, the distant fells of Derwent and Lawton overlook the town. On a grassy mound, some 3 miles east of Keswick, is the enigmatic Castlerigg stone circle. Experts still argue over the possible use of these 38 stones, arranged in an oval of some 90 feet across, although it is generally believed to have had some Bronze Age ceremonial purpose. South of Castlereagh is Thirlmere. In 1879, the Manchester Water Company built a dam at the northern end of this valley, which raised the water level of the two original lakes of Leithswater and Brackmere by some 54 feet, thereby creating one single lake, now called Thirlmere, which means the Lake of the Hollow. South of Thirlmere lies the picturesque village of Grasmere, place of pilgrimage to Wordsworth's legions of disciples. William Wordsworth came to live at Dove Cottage with his sister Dorothy in 1799, and it was here that his finest works were accomplished. William and Dorothy were both buried in Grasmere churchyard. Doubling back northwards brings us to the Vale of St John's at the foot of Thirlmere, facing Blencathra and Skiddaw. It was here that King Arthur was trapped by the beautiful witch Gwendolen and held in an enchanted castle, conveniently unable to defend his country, so it is said. The northern end of the vale opens out to reveal the full splendour of Blencathra, otherwise known as Saddleback, a fanciful reference to its humped shape. These mountains, and those of Carrick and Callbeck immediately to the north, contained much of England's mineral wealth, and many specimens can be found by prudent search, both here and elsewhere in the lakes. This is lead ore, called galena, and this is a comparatively rare variety of zinc ore. The technicoloured peacock ore of copper contrasts with the metallic yellow of iron pyrite, or fool's gold. Iron also occurs as hematite, the bloodstone. Fluorspar is often associated with metal ores on the perimeter of the Lake District, in cubic crystals of various colours. Quartz is everywhere, in different forms. Calcite is also often found with the metal ores. The approach to Ullswater from Matterdale is a dramatic plunge with a view across the lake to Hallin Fell. These fells border the last English red deer preserve of Martindale. Hiding behind Hallin Fell is the little bay of Howtown, which looks out across Ullswater towards Pooley Bridge with its nearby quiet moorings. Ere Force, 70 feet of falling water in a damp, dark chasm, is the scene of the sad and romantic legends popularised by De Quincey and Wordsworth. Nearby, Galbarrow Park is the site of Wordsworth's oft-quoted daffodils, albeit nowadays rather less of a host than in Wordsworth's day. Above Galbarrow, the view southwards along Ullswater is framed by the mountains of Patterdale to the west and Martindale to the east. The 7.5 mile long lake of Ullswater takes its name from a Viking chieftain called Ulfar, since during the 10th and 11th centuries this whole area supported a Scandinavian culture who doubtless felt very much at home in this mountainous country. From the head of Ullswater, several lonely valleys probe deep into the mountain ranges. This one into the southern flanks of Helvellyn. The way south is over the Kirkstone Pass, which is frequently the first to be blocked by winter snows. The ascent of Kirkstone begins at Brotherswater, with fine views across Dovedale to Scandale Fell. The summit of Kirkstone Pass stands at 1,500 feet, overlooking Ullswater to the north and Windermere Lake to the south. To the northwest of here is the least visited major lake of Haweswater. The ancient village of Mardale lies drowned beneath the artificially raised waters of this lake. Romans once marched across the tops of the mountains above the lake on their way to Hadrian's Wall, and before them many Bronze Age settlements were to be found in this area. It is strange that with all this past activity, Haweswater is now the most peaceful of the major lakes, and is a fitting place to end any visit to the northern Lake District of England, for here one can dwell upon the ancient and wild beauty with little fear of interruption by the 20th century. The largest lake in England is here, in southern Lakeland, for Windermere is 10.5 miles long and in places over a mile wide. Windermere takes its name from a Norseman called Winander, who was a sort of local hero. This lake has been busy with waterborne traffic right since the Roman occupation of Britain. Bowness on Windermere on the southeastern shores of the lake, is a favourite starting point for many of the Windermere pleasure boats. At the southern end of Windermere, there is a unique travel interchange. The Lakeside and Haverthwaite Steam Railway, which is nowadays just a remnant of the old Ulverston to Lakeside Railway, connects here with cruisers which ply the length of Windermere and back in about 2.5 hours. South of Windermere, and on the edge of the Lake District, is Cartmel. Cartmel Priory dates back to 1188, although only the church remains nowadays. Within the village, the Priory Gatehouse dates back to 1330. North of Cartmel is Coniston Water, 5¼ miles of straight water where Donald Campbell established a world water speed record in 1959 of 260 miles per hour. Boating activities today are rather more leisurely. Coniston village was the hub of many ancient settlements in this area, but it grew to almost its present size during the mining boom of the 1800s, when rich metal ores were dug from the surrounding fells. During the same period of history, the steamship Gondola was built. The original gondola gave good service for 8 years, after which she was abandoned. Remarkably, her remains washed ashore in 1963, and during the 1970s an ambitious attempt was made at restoring her. The results can be seen today as this splendid craft carries passengers quietly along the lake. Not far from here is little Yew Tree Tarn. South of Coniston, the view from the western side of Subberthwaite Common sweeps across the Duddon Sands to the Dunnerdale Fells, backed up by Ulpha and Harter Fells. A little further south from here are the magnificent remains of the Savignac Abbey of St Mary of Furness. The abbey was built around 1127 from local red sandstone. It was later occupied by the Cistercian order, whose pastoral invasion of Lakeland resulted in much of the farming landscape seen today. Even older than Furness Abbey is the Viking cross at Gosforth to the north. This 1,000-year-old fusion of Scandinavian, pagan and Christian symbols is carved in a 14.5 feet high block of sandstone. North of Gosforth is Ennerdale, a region which was much loved by Coleridge, and today Ennerdale offers a special solitude to the seasoned walker. Wasdale has a different kind of wildness to Ennerdale, perhaps inspired by the 2,000 feet high scree slopes which plunge 258 feet into England's deepest lake. At the head of the valley is Great Gable, standing majestically at just under 3,000 feet high. These runic inscriptions are carved on an Anglian cross, which is about 1,100 years old and stands in Urton Churchyard in nearby Eskdale. The old iron mines at Boot in Eskdale were the original reason behind the present-day miniature railway running from here to Ravenglass down on the Cumbrian coast. coastal end of the railway is Muncaster Mill. A mill has been on this site since at least 1470, and some of the water-powered millstones in use today are actually 150 years old. Eskdale is one of the prettiest valleys in the Lake District, and it doesn't seem to worry itself about not actually having its own lake. The peacefulness of Eskdale was briefly shattered by a bout of mining activity in the mid-1800s, and before that by the Roman occupation under Hadrian. The precipitous modern road and hairpin bends down the side of Hardknot Pass would probably have caused nightmares to a Roman road builder stationed here at Meliobogdum Fort, for the old Roman road runs a much straighter course. This road was built in the early years of the 2nd century for a 500-strong cohort of infantry, and was midway between the forts at Ravenglass and Ambleside. This fort was in use for only 50 years, whereas Ravenglass Fort probably enjoyed life into the 4th century. Most valleys on this western fringe of Cumbria stage shows every year, which are usually based on farming and agriculture. This is the Eskdale show during the early hours of the big day. The stars of these shows are invariably the distinctive brown Herdwick sheep. Herdwicks are indigenous to Cumbria alone in Britain, and may have existed here right back to the New Stone Age. Whatever their ancestry, the Herdwick sheep and their wool have become a symbol of Lakeland. The weather improves later in the day to give a splendid view from the top of Hardknot Pass down along Eskdale. On the other side of the Hardknot Pass is tranquil Dunnerdale, otherwise called the Duddon Valley. Dunnerdale inspired 35 of William Wordsworth's sonnets, and such inspiration is easy to feel on a journey along the Dale. In its upper reaches, Dunnerdale bends round past Hardknot to face the Rhinos Pass. An early morning view from Rhino's summit really does give perspective to the view across Little Langdale above the dawn mists. Great Langdale lies to the north, and the skyline is dominated by the Langdale Pikes. Great Langdale is probably the favourite valley in the Lake District for the climbing fraternity, with the surrounding fells offering challenges for all capabilities. Elterwater nestles near the foot of the valley, and from above the lake, fine views can be had back up Great Langdale. Many older buildings in Lakeland are built or roofed in local slate. Apart from roofing, slate is now enjoying a renewed popularity as a decorative material, as displayed here at Skelwith Bridge. The slate rock comes from here at Kirkstone Pass, high up on the slopes of Snarker Pike. Here, large blocks of slate are sawn into manageable sizes. In order to preserve the natural strength and waterproofing, slates for roofing are still cleaved by skilled hands. Stacks of roofing slates look out over the Kirkstone Pass, across to the highest pub in Lakeland. The Kirkstone Pass Inn stands at 1,450 feet above sea level at the summit of the pass. Running almost parallel with the Kirkstone Pass is Troutbeck Valley, along which the Romans marched from Ambleside across the high country to Penrith in the north. Troutbeck village straddles the old road up the dale for about a mile. The village is really a collection of hamlets clustering along a line of springs and wells, and some of the buildings here date from the 1600s. Ambleside is a largish town at the northern end of Windermere, and despite its accent on tourism, it still retains some of its 15th century beginnings. Ambleside means riverside pasture, and the 17th century bridge house, which is said to have been built over the stream by a Scot to avoid land tax, was actually built to store apples, when all of this area was an orchard. Southwest of Ambleside is Esthwaite Water, in a gentle landscape of forest and lakeside trails. At the northern end of Esthwaite Water is Hawkshead. Hawkshead became a central market township in the Middle Ages, and many 17th century buildings remain. This one once belonged to Anne Tyson, with whom Wordsworth lodged in 1779. At the other end of Esthwaite Water is the village of Near Sawrey. Mrs. William Heelis lived here at Hilltop Farm. She is better known as Beatrix Potter, the creator of delightful animal stories, of such as Squirrel Nutkin and Jemima Puddle Duck. The jewel in the crown of southern Lakeland must be here at Tarn House, between Coniston and Windermere. Wordsworth wrote of the Lake District, "Every man has a right and an interest who has an eye to perceive and a heart to enjoy." And with that thought, we leave southern Lakeland.